welcome back to my podcast, everybody who may be listening. So this podcast is going to be more geared towards females, females like mothers, grandmas, aunties, girlfriends. I mean, it can cater to guys too, who might not have as much knowledge about football but love to watch it. So, first I want to start out by talking about every position in football. Say their name, explain what they do, and I'll probably most likely put a picture on the screen, maybe a small video showing certain things about the game. So, first, I want to get into the offensive line. So, the offensive line, it consists of 5 guys. Now, they're the big guys. There's a way to tell females or guys who these people are. Offensive lines are usually the tall guys, 6 foot above, 6 foot and above are usually who they are. And they're usually tall guys or tall and fat. And if they're not fat, they're usually the tall guys who got a lot of meat to them. So you should be able to tell who they are. So the offensive line on the far left side, this position name is called a left tackle. He's on the farthest left. And then next to him, to the right of him, is the left guard. So there's 2 guards and 2 tackles. So farthest left is the left tackle, and right next to him on the right side is the left guard. And right next to him in the middle of the whole line is the center. He's the person who hikes the ball to the quarterback and puts the ball in the play. So he is responsible for starting the entire play. A play cannot start without the center because he has the ball at the start of the play and he hikes it to the quarterback. And to the right of him, right next to him, is the right guard. So left guard and right guard. Right guard is to the right side of the center, and the left guard is to the left side of the center. And then right next to the right guard on the right side is the right tackle. Yes, so the right tackle is to the right, is opposite of the left guard, and right next to the right guard. So those are the 5 guys on the line. And the line's responsibility, they pass block and they run block. So basically, they're responsible for protecting the quarterback and opening up holes and lanes for the running back. They're really the most important position in the game, but they don't get the credit that they deserve because they don't score touchdowns. So the things that they do really go unnoticed. But when the player is rushing for all them yards and the quarterback has all that time in the pocket to throw the ball, you better believe that it's because of his offensive line. And you better believe that he respects those guys more than anybody else. Running backs and quarterbacks respect the offensive line more than anybody because without them, you can't do anything. So, next up, we have the quarterback. The most important position, most known position, and most protected position there is. So, the quarterback gets the ball from the center. So he lines up directly behind the center, and the quarterback throws the ball. The quarterback throws the ball. He either gives the ball to the running back, or he throws the ball. The quarterback can run too, but he usually doesn't run. If he does, it's a design play. So quarterbacks usually throw the ball, or they hand the ball off. And next to the quarterback stands the running back. The running back can stand to the left of the quarterback, to the right of the quarterback, behind the quarterback. The running back just has to be behind the offensive line somewhere. It doesn't matter where he is, just behind the offensive line. So the running back can either run the ball or catch the ball. The running back can get the ball from the quarterback, or he can run a route and the quarterback can throw it to him. And the next position and the last position, let's do this. Okay. So there's a position called the tight end. The tight end he can either line up far outside of the offensive line, or he can line up right next to the offensive lineman. So let's say it's a running play or a pass play. So the tight end will line up right outside of the right or left tackle. So he'll be outside of the right or left tackle. So he can be an extra offensive lineman, or he can be an extra receiver. So tight ends are usually bigger guys too. So let's see. Okay, so offensive linemen are usually the biggest guys. Tight ends are usually the second biggest guys. And the quarterback's usually tall and slim. Quarterback's usually tall and slim. And tight ends usually tall and muscular. That's because they need to block too. So with tight ends, they either run or pass. They either block, or they go to catch passes. Some teams use tight ends in very different ways. Some teams run different offenses. So some teams use their tight ends to run block, and some teams use them to be deceptive and catch passes. So the next position that we have is our wide receivers. So usually, depending on the offense or personnel, there can be anywhere from there can be anywhere from 1 to 4 wide receivers on the field at one time. But for every wide receiver there is one less tight end or running back. So let's say you have 4 wide receivers on the field. That means that you will not have a running back or tight end on the field, because then there will be more than 11 players on the field. So in the base offense, there will usually be 2 wide receivers. There will usually be 2 wide receivers, 1 running back, 1 tight end, 5 offensive linemen, and a quarterback. So, but that's interchangeable depending on the offense that the team runs. So wide receivers catch the ball, and they can also run the ball on certain occasions. Some wide receivers are fast and have real fast twitch muscles, and are twitchy. So they'll run like jet sweeps, where the quarterback will motion them across. So basically they'll give them a signal, and they'll run across the field, and they'll hand them the ball off like they're a running back. So, but usually wide receivers catch the ball, they line up outside of the tight ends and outside of the offensive lineman. And there's outside receiver. He's on the very outside, he usually lines up close to the out of bounds line or on the hash. And hash is just a little dash mark on the field. And then there's a slot receiver. He usually lines up inside the hash and closer to the offensive lineman. So wide receivers are usually okay, so let's see. Outside wide receivers are usually the bigger guys. They're usually the bigger wide receivers, so they're usually about somewhere between 6 foot and 6'3", at least on a college level. Between 6 foot and 6'3", and they're more used to catch more contested passes, and usually run deeper routes. So they have the height and the more physicality. So the quarterback can just lob the ball to them when it's like a 4th and 1, so they can just jump up everybody and catch the ball. And the slot receiver, usually the smaller guys, usually around 5'8" to 5'11". Not as much muscle, but they're usually the faster guys. So they run like short routes, like a hitch, a slant, a drag route. They run these short routes, and then they because they can create more separation, easier for them to get open. So they're just annoying the guard. So that's what the slot receivers are. And on the defensive end, let's go to the defense. So there's offensive line. There's also a defensive line. Now with defense, it's similar to offense in the fact that there can be a varying number of defensive linemen depending on the defense that the team runs. So let's see. So let's say there's let's put it like this. There's a defensive tackle. Defensive tackle or nose tackle. It has 2 names, defensive tackle and nose tackle. So he usually lines up right over or right outside of the center. And basically what he does is try to rush the quarterback or stop the run. So his job is to get past the offensive lineman and tackle the ball carrier. And he can push the lineman back, or he can run right past them, or he can run right into him and pull him and push him out the way. He can do whatever he has to do to get to the quarterback or get to the running back and make the play. And outside of him are 2 defensive ends. Now, they're usually edge rushers. So basically what they do is they keep outside contained. So usually when they rush into the backfield, rush to the quarterback or rush to the running back, they rush outside. They rush outside so that because the football is crucial for ball carriers to get outside. If you give up the outside, you're not doing your job. So defensive ends, they usually keep outside contained. And they all line up right next to each other. Defensive tackle and defensive ends, they all line up right next to each other. And there can be 1 or 2 defensive tackles, and there can be 1 or 2 defensive ends, depending on the defense. So, they all line up. It's like they're basically the opposite of the offensive line. And right behind the defensive line are the linebackers. So they're usually 2 to 4 linebackers. So they're usually 2 linebackers. They're called inside linebackers. They line up right behind the defensive line. And their job is to read. They take a read step. So basically that means they shovel their feet twice. They shovel their feet once. And when they shovel their feet, they're supposed to be looking at the quarterback and seeing if it's a run play or a pass play. And once they figure that out, they react accordingly. So those are the inside linebackers. The outside linebackers usually line up outside of the defensive ends. And I'll have pictures up on the screen where I'm outlining where, these positions are so you can better get a grasp of what I'm talking about. But the outside linebackers line up outside of the defensive ends, and their job is to either rush the quarterback or rush the running back, or they drop back and guard the wide receivers. So once they see it's a run, they run and try to tackle the ball carrier. Once they see that it's a pass, depending on the play call or whatever defense is being run, they drop back. So basically they run forward and then they turn around and run back to get to their zone and guard the wide receiver. And then farther behind, usually 10 to 12 yards from the center, 10 to 15 yards from the center is the safeties. So the safeties are really the lurkers. They're the last line of defense. So basically, the safeties. So the safeties are usually the hardest hitters on the team, next to the linebackers. Safeties and linebackers are usually the hardest hitters on the team. But the safeties are really freelance players. They sit and react to everything. So they don't really have a certain job on every play. They sit back. They say, sometimes they need to help their cornerbacks, which I'll get into next, who they are. So let's say the safeties will sit in the middle of the field, and depending on what let's say the quarterback looks to the left, they'll run that way. So it really just depends on what's going on in the field. They just react to what's going on in the field. And the last position on defense are the cornerbacks. And basically the cornerbacks, they just guard the wide receivers. And they have probably the hardest job on the field because the game is so much catered around making it harder for the corner to do their job. So the corners are lined up right over the wide receivers. They're on the farthest margins of the field. And like I say again, I'll have pictures up to show you this, but the corners are on the farthest margin of the field, and they guard wide receivers. Some of the most notable names are Darrell Reeves, Deion Sanders, or Richard Sherman. So even if you haven't watched much football, maybe you've heard those names before, and if you have, then you should know what a cornerback is. So, other than that, as far as the positions, we can get into some of the things that I've heard people question. Females, my mom, my girlfriend, aunties, uncles, whatever the case may be, question about football. So, first thing we get into is the difference between a field goal and a PAT. So, a PAT stands for point after touchdown. So, a PAT is worth 1 point. And a PAT is basically a field goal kicked can only be kicked after a team has scored a touchdown. So a touchdown is worth 6 points, and then that PAT is that 1 point that makes it 7. Versus a field goal, which is worth 3 points. A field goal is only kicked when a team has not scored a touchdown. So basically a scenario would be something like this. So let's say a team has been driving down the field, they've been working their way down the field, and it's 4th down, and they don't want to, but they still want to get some points. They don't want to take the chance of not scoring at all. They would kick a field goal, and it's worth 3 points because they haven't scored yet. It's just a way to get them some type of points and keep them in the game. So that's the difference between a field goal and the PAT. And second is an interception and a pick. Now, my mom really doesn't know this, but some people don't know that an interception and a pick, it's the same thing. It's just 2 different words that football players use. It's the same thing, though, just different terminology. It's basically when a defender, so basically when a quarterback throws a ball and the defense catches it. That's what an interception / pick is. It's when the defense takes the ball away from the offense. And the next thing we'll get into is the set of downs. So basically a team has 4 chances to get a first down. And if they don't, they either turn the ball over or they'll punt the ball. So that's what a set of downs is. A set of downs is a team's 4 opportunities to get a first down. And then the next thing is a punt versus a kickoff. I can see how this can get confusing to somebody who doesn't and hasn't been around the game of football that much. So a punt happens after a team. Okay, so a punt occurs after when the team has tried to get a first down and they're on 4th down, and they decide to kick the ball to the other team. So basically, after 4 downs, if the team hasn't gotten a first down, they decide to kick the ball to the other team. As opposed to a kickoff. A kickoff is after a team has already scored and then they kick to the other team. So a kickoff can only occur after a team has already scored or after halftime. And a kickoff also starts the game off. So it can only happen after a team has scored. And the next thing is blocking. Only the offense blocks. I often hear my mom say, block them. Like, that is not a defensive thing. Only the offense blocks people. If the defense is blocking people, there should be flags all over the place because that's not how the game is played. So only the offensive guys block people. And another thing is pass interference. So basically pass interference, it can be on the offense and defense. It's most likely and it's most often called on the defensive player. That is basically when you interfere with a player's ability to catch the ball. So let's say the ball is thrown in the air and the corner grabs a player's arm and pulls him down, or grabs a player's arm and just pulls it down and that restricts him from catching the ball. That's when a pass interference will be called, and it's worth 15 yards. It's a 15-yard penalty. So the last 2 things I want to get into are pass interference. False starts and offsides. So basically, a false start is when somebody on the offensive side moves before the ball is snapped. So let's say the quarterback says set go to throw the defense off, and a wide receiver, a running back, or offensive lineman moves before the center snaps that ball back to the quarterback. That's a false start. So nobody can move on the offensive side until the center throws that ball back. And the last thing is offsides. Offsides is only on the defense. That is when the defense... So offsides is when the defense jumps over the line of scrimmage before the ball is snapped. So basically, let's say the quarterback says set go just to throw the defense off, and one of the defenders jumps before the center actually hikes the ball. That is considered offsides. Now, depending on how far the defensive player goes, they can come back behind the line of scrimmage and it won't get called. So let's say the defender jumps, but he doesn't go that far, and he comes back before the ball is snapped, they won't call it. But if a defender jumps across the line of scrimmage before the ball is hiked, and then the ball gets hiked, that will be considered offsides. So yeah, those are the things that I hear get questioned the most, and the things that stir up the most confusion as far as football.